lacking in that respect, where you'd say otherwise that Landorus can run free and just have a field day against Tim's team.
Well, trainers, if you're not excited, get excited. It's time to kick off Swiss Round 1 here at EUIC. And we have got the Raging Bolt and the Incineroar out on the field for Victor Medina, and for Tim Edwards, the Rillaboom and the Urshifu. Intimidate's coming down. That's something Tim does not want to see, but thankfully Urshifu has a trick up its sleeve with its ability.
Yeah, that's true. That Intimidate from the Incineroar from Victor's side, really useful onto these physical attackers. The Urshifu going to put a bit of pressure onto that Incineroar, especially when it's paired up with the fake out from that Rillaboom. So something that Victor might want to adjust here to take it out of harm's way and preserve that Intimidate for later. But the Raging Bolt in a nice position. It probably is a bit fake out fodder right now, but if it is left alone, it's got the opportunity to put pressure on that Urshifu or even get one of those really important Calm Mind set up.
Exactly, and the Surging Strikes potentially on that Urshifu, knowing that it has those guaranteed critical hits, is going to be able to negate the Intimidate it has taken through. Urshifu, however, switching out, maybe saying I need to come back in later and be able to unleash all of my extra power. Potentially needed something like the Close Combat instead, and now we're going to see the Raging Bolt come in here for Tim. Incineroar leaving the field as well critically, maybe didn't want to take those Surging Strikes, maybe thinking, hey, I can Intimidate and fake out later on. Let me bring Rillaboom to the field and make a little bit of a mirror match here for us.
Yeah, just a fake out here from the Rillaboom on Tim's side, quite rightly wanting to prevent any sort of setup or damage coming out. Gives that nice protection to the Raging Bolt that's come in on Tim's side of the field. So we've got an identical mirror on both sides of the field. The one thing that Victor's got in their back pocket is an active fake out now, so they can prevent that Raging Bolt on Tim's side from moving this turn, which then opens the door for your own Raging Bolt to potentially get that all-important Calm Mind off, or just a big, powerful Dragon-type attack into the opposing target. The one thing you have to watch out for is the Rillaboom on Tim's side. It has got access to that high horsepower, so will hit for super effective damage. But are you inclined to maybe go for that terrestrialization here, go for that fairy terror typing to get rid of that dragon threat and that ground threat?
Well, there goes the fake out on Victor's side as the Rillaboom on Tim's side decides to switch out here. This is what we see constantly from these pivoting pals, the Rillaboom and the Incineroar, leaving the field to come back in and keep that fake out pressure live on the board. We're going to see the Fluttermane join the field though, however. This is, I think, in a nice position to start threatening the opposing Raging Bolt with something like a Moonblast in this next turn, or start changing up the pace of speed with that Icy Wind that you mentioned earlier. Protosynthesis joining the field, so it will be this speed investment onto this Fluttermane as the Raging Bolt on the opposing side is now able to go for that Calm Mind. It couldn't do it in the first turn, but now Victor is able to utilize it, so it gets a boost to its special attack and critically its special defense. This could be huge in the face of this Fluttermane.
Yeah, it's nice for Victor to be able to get that off at the opportunity early on in this game, especially a good adjustment from Tim here to get that Fluttermane out on the board. It's a really good check most of the time too. That Raging Bolt is going to be able to threaten with those big, powerful Moonblasts, and it's also got access to Taunt as well. Interestingly, Tim running that, so if you want to prevent the Raging Bolt from setting up even further, you've got the option there, and you also prevent it from protecting, which can maybe benefit your own Raging Bolt that's on the field now. It probably wants to try and catch up, but have you got the space to do that? I think Tim has the ability to maybe terrestrialize to get around a potential Dragon-type attack that could come in here, but committing to it so early on in this kind of really slow-paced game might not be something that Tim's comfortable to do right now.
Critically, the Fluttermane switches out, so it will lose its Protosynthesis boost here. It is naturally quite speedy anyway, so it may not be too instrumental into the next couple of turns, as that terrestrialization that you have mentioned, Lee, has come on. The sparks are already flying out there on the stage as it drops that dragon weakness. It's now the fairy type is going to be completely immune to anything the opposing Raging Bolt wants to throw its way in terms of a Dragon Pulse. But on the opposing side, it looks like Raging Bolt got the same memo, and it is also turning into a fairy type here, Lee.
Yeah, it's if you're going to take a step, I'm coming with you. This is exactly what we're normally likely to see to get around those dragon threats here. Rillaboom going for that Woodhammer, suspecting a big damage into that Fluttermane that now switched out into the Rillaboom, taking that really comfortably here. And Tim playing catch-up. Here is that Calm Mind coming out. Can Victor capitalize, though, on their Calm Mind that they've already set up that turn before?
Now, this is where you really have to play detective. You have to be so cognizant of all the moves and counter moves on the field. Keep an eye on those Calm Minds. That's 2 now for Victor, 1 for Tim. So we know that that Raging Bolt is at +2 special defense. A lot of the special attacks that might come through from the Fluttermane in the back are going to be doing minimal damage, particularly now it's that fairy type. It looks like Victor could be setting up this Raging Bolt for an end game sweep.
Yeah, it could be. And I think the one thing that you've got to look at with Victor is the fact that they do have an Incineroar on their side of the field with that parting shot. That is one way to kind of neutralize those Calm Mind boosts. You can reduce that special attack stat and kind of keep it in check, whereas for Tim, they don't really have the ability to do the same thing, which is maybe something that Victor can really lean into here. You've got to be careful with that. But the Rillaboom now has taken a little bit of damage on Tim's side, might be susceptible to going down to a +2 Dragon Pulse that Victor's Raging Bolt has got. You could go into that. It's risky though, because if you see it switch out here into that Flutter Mane, you kind of waste a turn. You don't want to do that.
That's a decent amount of damage down as well from the U-turn. That is something that Tim has to be cognizant of onto that Rillaboom. You know, next time it comes in, maybe takes a Wood Hammer or a U-turn, it is potentially going to be KO'd. Incineroar rejoins the fray. This could be the great opportunity for Rillaboom to get out of here, however, so it can reset some of these Intimidates. Incineroar obviously going to have the Fake Out in play on the next turn as well, so a wise adjustment here with a cheeky critical hit for a little bit of extra damage on Tim's side. So you can now readjust your ball position, but as you said, Lee, there's no Incineroar in the back for Tim, so he can't bring in a potential Fake Out. So why not bring in a Ghost type that cannot be hit by it?
Yeah, and we've already seen that Thunderclap hasn't been chosen here, so we know it's either going to be Calm Mind on both sides of the field or it's going to be a Dragon Pulse. Tim playing catch-up once again, going for that second Calm Mind now on +2, special attack, special defense, and Victor not stopping, saying, okay, well, here we go. We're just going to continue doing this. Now +3, like you say, Lou.
At +3 and +2 on Tim's side, so we've got to keep an eye on these. If one of these sits out, it's going to be wild, but I'm pretty sure our trainers want to keep them in play.
Yeah, and the nice thing about the Flutter Mane is now it can come in, it's got access to Thunder Wave, which it can really utilize. That might not be really important for the speed tiering here, because we've seen the Rillaboom outspeed the Raging Bolt anyway, which is pivotal to get it off the field and have that nice pivot. But the fact is that you can stop it in its tracks. The chance of it being fully paralyzed, if you can land Thunder Wave into it, could be a nice option here for Tim to lean into, especially because this Raging Bolt on Victor's side is starting to get really quite scary for things like the Rillaboom when it comes back in, or that Urshifu.
Exactly, and the Raging Bolt now is going to go for the Protect, changing things up a little bit, going a bit defensive, not wanting to take any unnecessary damage at this point as Flutter Mane comes through with the Thunder Wave. Now that it has lost its electric typing, it is going to be vulnerable to having its speed lowered and potential chance of paralysis. Raging Bolt, however, on Tim's side, blinks first, goes for the Dragon Pulse. It's not enough to get a KO as Incineroar can retaliate with the Flare Blitz. Flutter Mane put down into the orange zone, a little bit of recoil, I think will be able to KO that Incineroar. So Victor down a Pokemon, but honestly, that Raging Bolt in fine force right now.
Yeah, it is, and it was a nice survival there in the Incineroar, really clutch to be able to get that damage onto the Flutter Mane. I don't think Victor minds the Incineroar going down here because it opens the door for the Rillaboom to come onto the field. The Grassy Terrain's just ended, so it's a perfect time to set that up again. And then you've got access to Grassy Glide. Now, that might be enough to pick up the Flutter Mane from the range that it's in. It is pretty good defensively, though. We've seen it take that Flare Blitz pretty comfortably from the Incineroar. So whether or not the Grassy Glide's going to have enough in the tank to take it down, I don't know, because you want to remove it before it gets the opportunity to get that Thunder Wave that Tim's kind of going for onto the Raging Bolt on Victor's side. So if you can protect that with a Grassy Glide knockout, it means that you've got a bit of a freer time going forward.
And the thing with the Thunder Wave as well is because it's a status move, you can't fall victim to a potential Thunderclap coming through from the Raging Bolt either. So unless the Raging Bolt wants to try for a double protect, because you don't want to switch it out if you're Victor, you want to keep all of those precious boosts on it at the moment, Flutter Mane might indeed be able to find its mark down unless, as you said, Lee, the Rillaboom is going to be able to get in its way.
Yeah, that's it. And I think it's all going to come down to which Raging Bolt falls first. If if you lose your Raging Bolt, then you probably lost this match. So it's all about protecting that Pokemon as we go forward. And both trainers at the moment got the tools to be able to do that. We see Flutter Mane is feeling threatened, so Rillaboom doing its job from Victor's side and switching out this next turn.
I like this adjustment because Rillaboom may be in a more prized position to take the Grassy Glide, but actually it's a Wood Hammer. And so that comes down, removes the Rillaboom from play. Tim now down a Pokemon. At least, however, you can bring potentially that Flutter Mane back in. Try and put it in a position to go for that Thunder Wave again as Raging Bolt goes for the Dragon Pulse. This is an Assault Vest Rillaboom.
Another huge survive.
Just able to hang on. But Lee, is that a fourth Calmed Mind?
That is a fourth Calm Mind, Lou, and that is +4 now, the Raging Bolt on Victor's side. It's deciding, you know, there is the opportunity there to go for those Thunderclaps maybe into the opposing Raging Bolt. but not going for it, saying, I'm really going to commit to this setup, and once it is at this stage, it's going to be able to hit pretty much most things. That Fluttermane, it comes back onto the field. If it does go for an attack, it's going to be susceptible to getting knocked out by that Thunderclap, and the Urshifu is not going to want to take that. It doesn't have the security of a Focus Sash either, so that coming onto the field is going to be very, very wary about what it does.
I'm starting to think towards the end game here as well, because if the Urshifu and Fluttermane and then the Rillaboom and whatever the fourth Pokemon on Victor's side there in the back is, goes down, then you're in a position where you've got Raging Bolt versus Raging Bolt. They can't touch each other with the Dragon Pulse either because they're Fairy types. It's going to come down to a lot of Thunderclaps going about.
Yeah, it really is, isn't it? You would think maybe Victor has got that Landorus in the back. Maybe that is a Pokemon that can come in, but the more the Calm Minds get stacked up, the less effective that becomes. Now the Fluttermane kind of forced out into the field almost in this situation where the Rillaboom's so low health, but the Fluttermane has to kind of target that, because if it doesn't, it's going to take a Woodhammer, it will get knocked out. And you're kind of trading one for one where you want the Fluttermane. Do you prioritize saying, okay, I'm going to ignore the Rillaboom here, I'll leave it on the field, let it get the knockout onto the Fluttermane, but after I get that all-important Thunder Wave? The problem is if Victor expects that and goes for a Protect here on the Raging Bolt, then you kind of waste your turn and lose your Fluttermane for nothing.
That's true. Fluttermane could try and remove the Rillaboom from play because, as you said, you don't want Rillaboom to go for a Grassy Glide into the Urshifu when it rejoins the field, and it looks like it's rejoining the field quicker than I was expecting. If this is going to be the Woodhammer or the Grassy Glide coming down into what was the Fluttermane, Urshifu is not going to appreciate that at all. No,
but you've got the Thunderclap as well from Tim that could come out onto that Rillaboom, but it is a Grassy Glide, expecting that maybe, and a Thunderclap double up. Here we go.
Look how much damage that actually did. That was a huge chunk into the opposing Raging Bolt as the Dragon Pulse comes through to finally finish off that Rillaboom. So we now will be forced to see the final Pokemon for Victor. I agree with you. I think it could indeed be that Landorus, and it will be in a position where it can maybe pressure into that Raging Bolt with a Sludge Bomb. But at the same time, Landorus does not want to see an Urshifu on the field. So in a way, Tim has put this Pokemon into a great position. The issue is Thunderclap.
Yeah, the Thunderclap is an issue, but it's not the Landorus. So this changes the dynamics completely here. The Ogerpon is going to be susceptible to those Dragon Pulses in particular. Not so susceptible to the Thunderclaps, but puts on a lot of pressure on that Urshifu. And the nice thing that this Ogerpon has is got access to Grassy Glide. Now that Grassy Terrain's on the field, it is going to be hitting a lot harder than the Rillaboom in all respects. So that Urshifu now is going to be in a horrible position where it cannot really take advantage of the Aqua Jet to supersede the Thunderclap that's coming out of Victor's Raging Bolt. It is going to be susceptible to getting just picked off quite easily from this Ogerpon.
Yeah, Ogerpon, a great adjustment coming in here. Does give a few more options where you can potentially, have that spiky shield as well to maybe try and get some damage down from a physical attack coming through from the Urshifu. But critically, like you say, utilizing that grassy terrain that's still in play. I'm not surprised Urshifu's going for the Detect. That's possibly what I would want to do as well if I was in this position. As Raging Bolt just shows no fear and says, hey, I'm facing down against my opponent. That opposing Raging Bolt, I'm going to Thunderclap it. I'm going to follow up with the Ivy Cudgel. And hey, who wanted a Thunderclap mirror anyway? I certainly didn't, says Victor Medina, and he gets rid of that Raging Bolt.
Well, that is a great turn here from Victor because expecting the Protect from the Urshifu, it's so heavily threatened, knowing that Tim knows that the Grassy Glide's there. I need to prioritize the Raging Bolt. That is going to attack, no doubt. And doubling up into it and getting the knockout is huge here. We said which Raging Bolt falls first is probably going to mean that the other player's going to win this match, and it's looking very likely now. Fluttermane coming back onto the field, going to be susceptible to an Ivy Cudgel, and the Urshifu still pressured from that priority Grassy Glide, and the Raging Bolt sitting in a pretty comfortable position, not really threatened it, +4 special defense from this Fluttermane. Victor doing everything right in this match, cool, calm, and collected.
He's truly set up a phenomenal endgame. With that Raging Bolt as well, the Thunderclaps were doing so much because even though Tim was able to set up +3 special defense, Victor had +4 special attack, so constantly was getting the edge. Urshifu tries its valiant best to be able to go for a double Detect, but it's not to be. Grassy Glide finds its mark, and now it is Fluttermane against the 2 remaining Pokemon on Victor's side. And considering that Fluttermane doesn't really have the utility to get the KOs here with a Moonblast, it's not going to be able to, I think, find a way through. However, I guess this is one option. You could go for the Thunder Waves and try and stop your opponents from moving at all, but it's a tall order to take.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, the Raging Bolt is in that really awkward position against the Fluttermane. Why it's normally quite good against it is if the Fluttermane has got those non-attacking moves, it can kind of just keep going for those, and you can't utilize your Thunderclap then, and well, the Dragon Pulse, you're immune to that. So the Raging Bolt kind of sitting there. So if you can remove that Ogerpon, there is maybe a slight chance to come back into this, but it is very slight. But you can see here, I think Victor's done a remarkable job, and that Ogerpon in the end game was a extremely smart pick.
I think it could have been slightly different as well if the Landorus had indeed come to the fray a little bit. You wouldn't have been able to have that pressure of the grassy glide, and potentially if you were able to get the paralysis down onto the Raging Bolt, then your Urshifu could breathe a little easier in the face of a Thunderclap. But a fantastic play by Victor and Tim, keeping him on his toes the whole way through with, matching those calm minds. But Victor, I think, very early on, having that fake out pressure with the Rillaboom switched in from turn 1 meant that he was always one calm mind ahead.
Yeah, and that was the big turning point in the game so early on. Like you said, that dictated how the rest of the match went. Victor kind of identifying an opportunity before Tim did, and then getting that calm mind just put them that step ahead, which Tim almost felt like they were playing catch-up. Did really well with the way that he was able to dispatch of the Rillaboom, the Incineroar, but really inevitably it allowed the room for the Raging Bolt on Victor's side just to get into a position where it was really comfortable with. And then when that Ogerpon came in at the end, you kind of said, well, that's curtains here. Victor performing extremely well. So a lot to do with Tim, and I think coming into game 2, and if, you don't really want to be on the back foot in this one. What adjustments do you make? Do you go straight in with your Raging Bolt and start that setup early on? You can go for that, and I think if you kind of try and keep pace at least, you're in a better position than you might have been in that game 1.
It can be so difficult though, particularly with these balanced mirror style games. It is feeling a little bit like a detective mystery where you're looking at the end and thinking, right, where were all the pieces in play that I missed along the way? And as you said, pretty much that turn 1, making the switch, bringing in that Rillaboom, having the fake out advantage meant that Victor constantly was working towards that end game from his advantage. Tim was then playing on the back foot. So when his own Raging Bolt went down, you could see how Victor had set that up right from chapter 1.
Yeah, and I think, the Fluttermane is really pivotal for Tim to lean into in this match. I think with the Thunder Wave, the taunt in particular, you do have a way to stop that Raging Bolt. So I think you need to look at that as an option coming into this game, but completely different change-up from Victor Lou.
Exactly. I mean, one way to stop the Raging Bolt is that Landorus, so it is out in the leads with that Rillaboom. On the opposing side for Tim, however, Raging Bolt is back with Rillaboom by its side. Yeah,
now we've got the Landorus here. It is putting instant pressure onto that Raging Bolt on Tim's side, but you do have that fake out of your Tim to prevent it from attacking this turn, which is nice, but then do you contest with the fake out situation that you've got from both of the Rillabooms here? Maybe protect your non-attacking Pokemon and then pivot out your Rillaboom to have a little bit more preferable positioning going into game 2. But problem is doing that, leaving that Raging Bolt unchecked, it does give it the opportunity to get a Calm Mind, and Calm Minds are really valuable against something like Landorus that relies on that special attacking stat more than a physical attack.
And Raging Bolt doesn't want to fall victim to a fake out and then a potential Earth Power coming through as well. So I think a wise Protect could be coming through. An adaptation, though, on Tim's side, going to be bringing in the Incineroar. Not only do you then have the fake out on the next turn, but you do get to throw the Intimidate down against that Rillaboom. Raging Bolt does indeed go defensive here. Early doors in game 2, going for the Protect, as Rillaboom was actually going for the fake out into that partner slot, trying to go down into the opposing Rillaboom. As Landorus sets up the substitute, this could potentially spell disaster in the end game, because now you have to worry. It's in a position where those Earth Powers are going to hit hard.
Showing why Victor is such a strong trainer, picking the opportunity, saying, yeah, well, I'm going to fake out your Rillaboom anyway, even though it's not probably the most optimal thing, because I'm going to have the substitute. I'm going to get it set up. If your Raging Bolt goes for an attack into me, then it'll just break the substitute and we'll be back in this same situation the next turn. But if you go for a switch and you protect, I'm going to catch you out. And Landorus now not going to be susceptible to that fake out that Tim's quite smartly brought onto the field to support that Raging Bolt in that situation now where the Landorus is pretty free to just go for a big attack. Go for a Sludge Bomb if you detect the Terastallization on the Raging Bolt or a big powerful Earth Power. Enough to force that Raging Bolt off the field.
I mean, all of game 1, we saw the Raging Bolts being completely resilient on the field. They stayed there so stoic, whereas now it's been forced off because of that Landorus hiding behind the little substitute. Landorus is able to now go for this Earth Power. Rillaboom able to eat that up much, much better, but you still have to contend with the potential Sludge Bomb the next turn. Rillaboom adding insult to injury to the Rillaboom on Tim's side with that U-turn follow-up as well. So Victor not only in a dominant position, but switching up the board state as well. Yeah,
and it's really important for Tim here to get rid of that substitute on that Landorus, because you want it to be susceptible to attacks this next turn round. You can go for a parting shot here, which will bypass the substitute. A lot of the special attack, more importantly, making things not be as threatened as they currently are. And I think that's a good plan, but then if you go for that, then you're leaving that substitute intact, and it's having a bit of more of a free ride than you want it to.
I do like the adaptation by Tim to bring this Incineroar, though, to this game, because it does give you a lot more utility with Fake Out, and critically, as you've said, the parting shot can still be in play even when the substitute is on the field. So a nice adjustment here on Tim. You can now bring bring in a potential Pokemon like the Raging Bolt again, maybe start going for those Carmines and setting up if the Rillaboom can find a way to keep the Landorus in check.
Yeah, and the interesting thing, even though you've taken that special attack drop, the one trump card that Victor's got in their back pocket now is going to be the Terastallization. Terra Poison will boost the power of Sludge Bomb, and a lot of things on Tim's team do not want to take a Sludge Bomb. In particular, if that Raging Bolt feels forced to go for the Terastallization, becomes susceptible to that move. The Rillaboom is in a position now where a Sludge Bomb, even without the Terastallization, is probably in range to get knocked out, so that is heavily threatened here. And the Ogerpon in that position for Victor, where it could go for a Swords Dance now, expecting maybe an Incineroar switch in from that Rillaboom to kind of protect that, giving you the opportunity to boost those attacks and become a big threat from that side of things.
Yeah, Tim's Rillaboom is rocking that Assault Vest, so it does give it a little bit of coverage into special attacking moves. However, as you said, the Terastallization could then give the extra offensive pressure to push it over into the KO range. So I think it's a wise adaptation here, bringing in the Incineroar that's going to be more poised to take the potential poison type attack. But if this is something Victor has predicted, then it could be getting very interesting. The Intimidate obviously not coming through the substitute on this occasion, and we're going to see some sparkles on the stage. It's just Terastallization time.
Yeah, and it's back onto that Raging Bolt, wanting to get rid of that big threat from Earth Power on the Landorus. But again, at the same time, double-edged sword here, because yes, you remove the weakness of the Earth Power, but you come susceptible to the Sludge Bomb. And here it is, there's that Swords Dance.
That's the thing, Ogerpon's like, it's not all about Landorus, guys, okay? I've got my Swords Dance, my attack is going to be raised. Landorus is going to go for that Earth Power, so a good Terastallization, but still so much damage coming through. Raging Bolt at least has the flexibility to go for this Calm Mind.
Yeah, and the problem is as well now that the Landorus substitute is still
there.
Set up. It's still there. You are in that position where you are not able to fake it out. If you're Tim, you want to pivot in these fake out partner and Pokemon between the Rillaboom and the Incineroar, but you're not able to utilize that as long as that substitute is on the field. And now you saw the damage from the Earth Power. Yes, the Raging Bolt has got a Calm Mind, but it's going to be very, very susceptible to a Sludge Bomb here from that Landorus. We've already talked about it. If it goes for the Terastallization, boost that move even further. The Raging Bolt in a very uncomfortable position. You need to remove that substitute, but can you ignore the Ogerpon that's just got that Swords Dance setup? It's sitting on +1. The Intimidate came in, dropped it one stage, but you set yourself up 2 stages, so you're still hitting very hard, and now you don't have that Dragon typing to get around the Ivy Cudgel attack.
That's very true. Both the Pokemon on Victor's side in formidable positions. Even though Tim has put in work to give some detrimental effects with the Parting Shot, with the Intimidate, there's still always an answer that Victor has for all of these questions. Well, looks like Terastallization is also going to come through on Victor's side now. It looks like it's going to be onto that Landorus as it popped out the substitute just before. It is taking on that Poison type. This not only gives us some defensive capabilities, but critically, Sludge Bomb is going to be boosted. Yeah,
and that Parting Shot is not going to matter so much with that boost from the Poison Terastallization, but expecting an attack to come into that angle. The Protect coming out from the Raging Bolt, kind of preserving it for one more turn, but here we go. Expecting a switch in a passive play from Tim. Victor saying, yeah, if you go for that, I'm going to punish it even more. Swords Dance once again, +3 Ogerpon.
Honestly, what a window of opportunity for this Ogerpon. Victor going, okay, maybe there's the Protect and the Sludge Bomb isn't going to really work, so how can I still get the most out of this turn? Oh, Ogerpon, go for another Swords Dance. Put yourself at +3.
Yeah, it's scary, but the one thing the Landorus is going to be susceptible to now is that Thunderclap. So you have the ability to go Thunderclap, get rid of that substitute, but at the cost of taking a Sludge Bomb, have you got enough in the tank to take that Sludge Bomb? That's going to be the question. Not only that, you're going to be taking neutral damage from the Grassy Glide. The Grassy Terrain's still on the field. You're going to be taking huge damage from the Ivy Cudgel, +3. So that alone is going to be putting enough pressure on. You can't ignore one target on Victor's side. You kind of have to concentrate on both. And have you got the resources to do that right now? It feels very stretched for Tim in this situation.
That's the thing. If you're Tim right now, who do you target? Which is the greater threat that you need to alleviate? And this is what we were saying about these balance games. You don't just have to think about the board staying now, you have to think about it towards the end game. All of these little pieces add up to such a good climax at the end of these matches. Rillaboom goes for the fake out into the Ogerpon, saying we're not going to mess around with all these Swords Dances. Instead, we're going to find our target on the Landorus. Now, who is it choosing? Because Landorus can do decent damage, amazing damage into both, but it chooses the Raging Bolt. It's not able to get the KO, meaning Raging Bolt is in a position where it can go for this Dragon Pulse. It can finally find a way to break through this substitute.
Yeah, we'll get rid of it eventually. That's great, but is it maybe one step too late now? Because now the Raging Bolt has survived. It's taken a lot of damage for its troubles, though, and now that Grassy Glide It's all about this grassy terrain. Is it going to stay in effect? Because you do have the option to go for that priority attack into the Raging Bolt and just remove it quite easily. But like you've said, Lou, the Rillaboom not in a great position either. The Ivy Cudgel are going to be very, very strong into that. The grassy terrain does leave the field, so there'd be no recovery, no priority grassy glide, at least this turn. But the one thing that the Ogerpon's still got in its back pocket, along with that Landorus, is they have the natural speed advantage against both of these targets, and both of them from Victor's side threatening everything on Tim's side.
And now that Landorus has actually come out of the substitute, it could potentially even be a swap here for Victor. You could bring your own Rillaboom back in, set that grassy terrain, and allow Ogerpon to get the grassy glide priority onto that Raging Bolt before it's had a chance to move. Yeah,
and the other risk is that you see Tim going for a Thunderclap here, and then Victor suspecting that and setting up another substitute. So it's risky.
Well, it looks like it's a protect from Raging Bolt, so maybe there is an opening for another one of these substitutes. The Ivy Cudgel was going down into that Raging Bolt. Victor really trying to remove it from play, but to no avail in this particular turn as Landorus does.
There it
Go
is.
for that substitute again. It's like, did you miss me? I'm back behind my cozy little plush.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about that Rillaboom either, because you're all the poison terror type now, all of those attacks. I mean, the high horsepower is a bit of an issue, but you've got the substitute to kind of give you alleviation there. U-turn going out, now another pivot round. If the Faker comes back onto the field again, you're in that same situation. Just this time around, your Raging Bolt is in a way worse position than they were previously.
And the U-turn, not the strongest attack in the book anyway. Even with a critical hit, it was not able to get rid of that substitute, so it will be in play. Tim, however, does still have all 4 Pokemon remaining, so you can take a look at your backline, the Incineroar and the Fluttermane, and just think about which Pokemon is going to try and switch the momentum back to your board state. Which one would you go for, Hilly?
It is really tough. I feel like the Fluttermane does give you the option to Icy Wind, maybe break that substitute, lower the speed on the Ogerpon, but is it going to be enough of a speed drop to kind of put your leverage your Raging Bolt into a position where it is going to be able to pick up the knockouts that it needs to? In this situation, I feel probably not, whereas the Incineroar comes in, it drops the Intimidate. That's kind of important onto the Ogerpon, making it +2 now rather than +3. All importantly, you've got a Fake Out to stop that Ogerpon. But at the same time, the Raging Bolt in that position, you're trading a Thunderclap here for a knockout of your own, and it doesn't feel that great. Once the Raging Bolt falls, then all your reliance comes into the Fluttermane there, and everything leans into that Pokemon alongside the Incineroar and the Rillaboom to kind of clean up from this point on.
That's the thing, both Pokemon viable options. It looks like Tim has gone for that Incineroar. As you said, it's a good way to kind of keep the Ogerpon in check in the next turn. The Intimidate kind of helping out reduce some of its offensive pressure. You have the Fake Out, but the Landorus is just completely unchecked. Once again, behind the substitute, and the timer is running out. Tim has got to lock in quick. Yeah, it's a really difficult situation here for Tim. Going for the Thunderclap into the Ogerpon, just not quite the damage that they needed. In return, Ivy Cudgel +2, more than enough. Yeah, Raging Bolt has been felled once again by Victor Medina's team, so it will be returning into its Pokeball, and Tim has the utility to switch up the ball position in this next turn. The Incineroar, however, is going to have to take this Sludge Bomb. So Victor being able to utilize the Terrestrialization, throw it this way, doesn't quite do 50%, so Incineroar, I think, can easily take maybe another one of these. Maybe not so much after the Flare Blitz, because it's going to take that recoil. It does get a KO, though. This is really nice. Both these Pokemon trainers trading a Pokemon, but the issue is Landorus is still in a prime position. Yeah, behind that substitute. And now when your big reliance is leaning into that Fluttermane, going up against the poison type that the Landorus now is, even though it's taken the parting shot from earlier in the game, it isn't hitting quite as hard as we normally likely to see it used to, but it's still doing enough. And you can see now probably an Earth Power into the Incineroar being enough to take that down. Sludge Bomb, the Rillaboom looks about in range, and that Fluttermane hasn't really got the offensive tools to deal the damage needed to that Landorus like it would have if it was not terrestrialized. That's the thing, Fluttermane only really running Moonblast as an offensive move. Yes, you have the Icy Wind, but that's only going to be a little bit of chip. And considering now it is a poison type as well, it really does not fear those fairy type moves. There is, however, still that Thunder Wave, and there is a world where you can potentially get a Thunder Wave down onto something like the Landorus, and then it just doesn't move. There is that world, but... It's a slim chance, but it's there. It's slim, and I think the thing that you're going to have to do really first is get rid of that substitute, and the pressure that Victor's being able to apply with just finding those openings at the perfect time to just reset that substitute up, reset the situation exactly how it was before you kind of lost all of that ground that you'd made up, Tim, and it's a really difficult situation. The Landorus showing why it's one of the best Pokemon in this format, and Victor obviously so familiar with it and piloting it so well in this game. I have to say as well, I love the way in Game 1, Victor really set up around the Raging Bolt, and now in Game 2, it's all about this Landorus that we've just seen out on the field since the leads being so incredibly dominant. Once again, the timer is playing against Tim. All these seconds count towards trying to find a way back into this Game 2 and force a Game 3 from Victor Medina. Incineroar switching out, wants to maybe keep that Intimidate and Fake Out for the Rillaboom to keep it in check a little bit, as Rillaboom on Tim's side can now rejoin the field.
Yeah, hoping to scout out maybe an Earth Power into that slot, trying to get rid of that Pokemon. As we do see a Thunder Wave into the Rillaboom here, going to be useful, and that chance of being fully paralyzed is going to be a thing now, but there is the threat, there is the Earth Power there into the Rillaboom, so nice switch from Tim, but the Wood Hammer from the opposing Rillaboom into the Fluttermane could be an issue as well. But just seeing that U-turn and more than enough.
Yeah, the double up. Sometimes teamwork does indeed make the dream work, and that combination on Victor's side will take Tim down to his last 2 remaining Pokemon. So Rillaboom also being able to make the adaptation thanks to that U-turn. So now Victor can bring in and reveal that 4th and final Pokemon. It is going to be the Incineroar.
Yeah, it's a great Pokemon to have coming in, offering that fake out support as well. And Tim really back against the wall here. I mean, Fluttermane pretty healthy. It is really going to struggle, though, against that Landorus. You're relying on your damage output, the Icy Wind. Hope that breaks the substitute, and then if the Fluttermane is targeted, which you're kind of probably hoping Victor does here, then we don't see a fake out from Victor's Incineroar, which is so easy onto the opposing Incineroar, and then Tim's got to hope that the Flare Blitz is enough to take down the Landorus, and then maybe there's a way back into this game, but it is a very slim one. Victor just playing extremely well and making life very, very difficult for Tim to get any sort of momentum swing in this game too.
It's not often we see an Incineroar come so late into a match either. Normally it's kind of out front and center, switching and pivoting, but Rillaboom had that absolutely locked in for Victor and was able to fulfill that role successfully. So now Incineroar able to come in, like you say, has that fake out, can just shut down the Incineroar on Tim's side, forcing Fluttermane to have to do the heavy lifting. The Moonblast going down into that Landorus. Is it going to be enough to be able to break that substitute considering the U-turn went into earlier? Yes. So now you have the Landorus exposed, but it's still left to move. It can go for this Earth Power, and with the damage already dealt into that Incineroar, it's going to go right down.
Yeah, all down and out for Incineroar here, and the Fluttermane, it's looking more difficult as every turn goes by here. You'd say that Victor is going to be able to lock this up this next turn, but there is hope with that Thunder Wave. Maybe there's a way back into it. We've seen stranger things happen, Lou.
Oh, no.
But not going to be the case here, as it does miss.
Landorus gets the last laugh. It's had the final word in every turn. Now it's able to even dodge out of the way. But take a look at that. That Sludge Bomb really not doing the damage into the Fluttermane. Considering as well the follow-up from the Flare Blitz, Fluttermane might have a window of opportunity to go for that Thunder Wave again.
If it had hit there and you got the fully paralysis, I think it might have been a different story, because we've seen the defensive capabilities of this Fluttermane. But even then, it's very long drawn out shot, isn't it? But there we go. There it is decided. Victor Medina, our winner of Swiss Round 1 here at the European International Championships.